See, I can add a button here to the main panel layout just by grabbing one and dragging it to the left. So I can grab it, and that's showing it here, right? I can delete that one now by selecting it, tapping delete, and then I can resize it like so. So if you want to add a button to the groups, you just right click either on the header of that group or in the white space between the buttons. And then you can add a new window manager there. Okay, and then once you've done that, then you can change the settings of that window manager button. All right, before we get into those, you see how it snaps once I get within a certain distance of the main toolbar? That's a feature that you can disable or enable. When you add a group, right here at the bottom of the list, you've got one for the window manager, which allows you to only add window manager buttons. Okay, and it must be in a group. And then you've got one for the workspaces. No one seems to understand how to use this, and that's because I haven't told you really. When you add the workspaces group, it essentially adds a button for every single workspace that you have in your workspaces folder. So what I did is I made a general group and then added a bunch of workspace buttons to it to make one that works kind of the way that I imagined it should. And then with these general groups, you can add any button that you want to it. You're not limited to only workspace buttons or only window manager buttons. You can add any of these available buttons to the general group. Okay, so you just right click on it and then add one or delete one. Okay, and this flips between the opened workspaces. This shows the desktop. This will open crude oil. This will open the ES, gold, NASDAQ, 6E. This will close the active current workspace. All right, but with the window manager, you can combine workspaces. The way Ninja handles workspaces is it simply hides charts and windows or shows them. And it stores whatever windows you have open in a given workspace in that workspace XML. And when you flip to it, all it does is it hides all the other windows, and it shows only the windows that are saved in that workspace XML file. Okay, so what we've done with a window manager is bypass that hiding and showing of the individual windows in a given workspace. And what you do is you right click on any one of these 8 buttons here, and you can add some or delete some. I think I've got enough numbers to go out to, well, I don't even know actually. It's a good question. The button images are in the TTP folder. So you got a Ninja 8 TTP button images, and there you'll see all the different window manager buttons to choose from. Let's just select window. Looks like we've only gone out to 10 or so. Yeah, 10. Back to the window manager. To combine all of the workspaces you have open, you just click on this button right here. To combine whatever workspaces you have open, it combines all the windows. So once you've done that, let's do this. I'll open another workspace. I'll open the 6E. That's going to take a minute to open. And then once that finishes, I'm going to flip to one of the other workspaces. So you don't add a workspace to the window manager button, Tony. You just open up whatever workspaces you want to include in the window manager buttons. Let me just start off the bat by saying the main issue with the window manager is that it's only going to save the windows that you have open at the time of saving. So when you click here, it automatically saves the current layout and closes the properties menu here. Okay, and then it'll store that layout. If after the fact you open up another workspace, you've added another set of windows, and those have not been saved in the previously saved window manager button. So you've added a bunch of different windows that are no longer a part of this template, and therefore when you try to use this template and you click on the button, it's going to shift some windows around, but it's not going to handle all of the windows you have open, and it's going to kind of act like it's broken. It may not be able to actually move all of the windows that it had previously saved because you've added new windows to it. So that's the main problem that you'll have with the window manager, and that is the number one way that you can mess it up. Okay, so if you experience it not working properly, it's probably because you've opened up another workspace or you've got one open that you didn't know about. And let me show you how to deal with that right now. So when you click on the workspaces button here at the top of the NinjaTrader Control Center menu, make sure that you can see the whole list of workspaces and you don't have any of these untitled ones open. So you just want to make it to where you've got only the ones that you're using open. Okay. Now you can mix and match. You can have some buttons that only store a layout for, say, 1 or 2 workspaces. But then if you open up another one, you need to either add another button to store the layout created with those workspaces open, or you need to replace some of the existing previously stored layouts, okay, that you previously saved in these buttons. Open up the workspaces that you want to use and just limit it to that for now until you get the hang of it. And then if you want to add a workspace later, do that later. Don't try to do too much all at once. But let's say that I'm going to have all 3 of these open all the time. These are going to be the main 3 that I trade. I'm going to store these in each of these different layouts. All right. Make sure that all the other ones are closed. All right. So now I can flip through the workspaces one by one. I can use the workspace button here to do that. That's this button. Click on that. This is the right arrow that will go to the next workspace. So there's crude oil. There's the ES. There's the 6E. And one thing that you want to do is you want to store one layout with every single chart that you have open in view. Okay, so this goes for any program really that has windows, especially windows that move. So any program that is not static, for instance, these charts, they're not static. You've got these bars that move up and down. You've got price movement over here. These numbers are changing, so they're dynamic, not static. Anytime you have a window from any program that is dynamic and it's changing constantly, it's going to require more resources from your CPU and GPU to redraw it. So every time one of these numbers changes, really with every single tick that comes in with NinjaTrader, because it's doing all these volume calculations and updating the time here and maybe some of these other values, it has to redraw that entire chart. It's not just redrawing the numbers here in that one bar, it's redrawing the entire chart. So the more bars that you have showing, like this, the more zoomed out you are, the more NinjaTrader has to redraw. The less bars you have in view, like this, the less NinjaTrader has to redraw. So therefore, the more windows, the more charts you have visible, especially if you're using multiple monitors, the more resources are going to be required per that program to redraw every single one of those windows. Okay, so if you experience where you have a lot of lagging charts, and you guys have experienced this, I know, the easiest way to get through that is to minimize all of the charts. Just hit this button right here, and that's just showing the desktop now. That's the easiest way to get the data caught up. Okay, because what happens with Ninja is it kind of builds a queue of chart refreshes. So as those ticks come in and they can't get processed, they get added to a queue, performance queue, whatever you want to call it, and Ninja has to get through every one of those until the charts get completely up to date. So the easiest way to get through that queue is to minimize all the charts and have nothing for Ninja to redraw, and then you can bring it back up. Okay, so if it happens, you start experiencing a lack of performance or lagging data, you need to store one layout where you've only got a couple of charts showing, preferably only minute charts and not tick charts, meaning not row bars and not tick bars and not range bars or any other chart other than minute or daily. All right, minute data is a lot easier data to process. Tick data is the heaviest to process. So any bar that's other than minute or daily or weekly or monthly is much more difficult to process. So you want to store a layout where you've just got a couple of minute charts showing of each market, and that's it. And then once you're through that initial news event or open or close, then you can shift back to your normal layout that you would have stored in one of these other buttons. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this #1 button. I'm going to click right here, click to show all windows. And suddenly all of the windows from all of those workspaces are now combined into this one view. It hasn't combined the workspaces. It hasn't messed up your workspaces. You're not going to cause a problem if you close Ninja down and you save it. It's not going to save all these workspaces combined. There's no problem doing this whatsoever. When you open Ninja back up, they'll still be separated out into individual workspaces and charts. You don't need to waste time trying to combine workspaces into one. You can leave them separated and just use this to combine them. And now what I'll do is I'll move all these charts around and I'm going to create a new layout. You want to make it to where you've got at least one layout that's stored that shows all of the windows. This is what I started to say a minute ago but didn't finish, because each chart has to be brought into focus to fully, what is it called, initialize, or what's the other one, instantiate. And I think they're instantiated when they're opened, but they're not fully initialized until they've been brought into focus. And into focus means that you can see them. So you need to move all these charts around. See, when I was flipping back and forth between crude, ES, and 6E, it took the 6E to fully show back up again. And it did that because I haven't brought each one of those charts into focus yet. So they're not totally initialized. Okay, which means that you're probably, and I don't know this completely, but I'm pretty sure, but let's say I'm 80% sure that you're not actually getting all of the signals from all of those charts until they've actually been brought into focus. So the signals that you'll see on the row 1 and the row 2 won't be complete until you've actually shown all those charts. So I want to make sure that I move all of these around, and I'm going to store a layout where all of these are showing. And it doesn't have to be pretty. It just needs to be that all of them are in view. The easiest way to control these windows is with some sort of another quote unquote window manager. And the easiest one to work with and the cheapest one I've found by far that's actually very useful is this little guy right here. And it's called Snap It. And you get that from the Windows Store. And I've made it to where I use the center mouse wheel to grab the title or the heading of the window. And then you see it shows these layouts. And then I just drag it into one of these tiles that I've created here, and it moves them around. I'm going to make it to where they are somewhat neat real quick. And I'm going to do that by, I've got 3 monitors, so I'm going to put all of the 6E on this one right here. And I'm going to try to arrange that quickly. Put all the ES over here. There we go. I'm going to put crude on this one on the right. All right. I'm going to go ahead and store that in button number 8. So when I right click on one of these window manager buttons, I'm presented with this properties menu. And this is where you determine which windows from NinjaTrader you want it to handle. You've got all the different windows that you can think of. The default settings for these buttons, when you add a new button, it's going to have most of these checked. The way that I sent out the buttons was that the top 4 and that 5th, let's say the first 5 buttons, have only the charts selected and the zoom levels, which means the number of bars that are showing per chart. So when that checkbox is checked, it'll return those charts to that zoom level. Now this setting here, this restore checkbox here that says hide minimized and handled windows. Whatever windows that are opened at the time that you save the layout and that you have minimized. So if I minimize any of these charts, the hide, what it means by hiding is it will hide them from the task tray. So you see now I've got this long list of charts because I have 3 workspaces open. It's a lot of different windows. So let's say that I go to this layout that I've stored previously. You see how it didn't do anything at all with the 6E windows? It's because I haven't stored those in that button. But what I can do now is I can hide all of these 6E windows. Okay, and there's 2 for crude oil. Tick 1 on the right, tick 2 on the left, and the same for the ES. tick 1 on the right, tick 2 on the left. So I can hide all of those windows that I've just minimized from this list. So you see this list is a mile long right now. So if I resave this button, layout 3, but with this checked as well, so I'm going to check it now. Okay, I'm going to check it now and then close it because those settings aren't stored until I click OK. And then I'm going to reopen it by right-clicking on it. There, it's checked. And now I'm going to resave. And now it's going to hide all of those minimized windows from this list. So evidently there were a couple that I didn't save there. Or is that so? No, I got to bring it back. So now I got to click on the button. Okay, so now they should be hidden. See? Isn't that cool? And we added that just to make it easier to, you know, hide some stuff from this list of open windows. Cool. Look at ES. Look at where ES is turning down from. Top of that upsloping channel there. So I'm thinking that's wave 3 high of a C wave up, but we'll see. All right, so that's pretty much it. And you just want to, you know, make it to where you've got a layout that is easy for you. You don't want to be overwhelmed. It's already overwhelming as it is. You don't want to try to, you know, store too many open windows. I would say no more than 4 per monitor, unless you've got a massive monitor and you can, you know, put a bunch of them on there. I've got some ideas for some different features that we'll end up adding to this. Like I'm going to have one button that'll just cycle through all of the open charts. It'll be able to store like the name of the chart, whatever I set in the tab name here. And then you'll be able to define like, you know, the order starting from the largest to the smallest. And you'll be able to set checkboxes for the order or, you know, put a value in. So it'll have to be some sort of a dynamic property grid, which is like the hardest programming there is. But eventually we'll have some other options that'll make this thing even more user-friendly. So, but for right now, I mean, that's pretty user-friendly. It's now the one other thing that I forgot to mention was that buttons 6 through 8, I had it to where it saved only the position of the toolbar with all of the groups. So the toolbar, maybe we should have 2 options here, one for the main panel and then one for the groups. I think that would be a good idea because right now it stores the position of the main panel with the positions of all of the different panels, grouped panels. Okay, so when I click on 7, they'll all congregate down here in the bottom left. And then 8, let's go to 1, or 6 rather. That will send all of them to position 1 for me, which is right here. And then 8 will move all of them over to position 3 for me, right here. See? And that thing that I was telling you about before, the way it snaps to the main toolbar, these groups, when they get within a certain distance, that's this setting right here. So you can disable that if it seems a little bit odd to you and it's frustrating. Like occasionally you'll have it, it's like somehow it's storing the opposite and reverse position of the main panel on one screen when it's on another screen. And then all of a sudden you find yourself moving a group around when the main panel is on a completely different monitor, and then it suddenly snaps to this weird position. So there is something very bizarre about the storing of this main panel's position when you have multiple monitors. And I think it's a Windows bug, because sometimes you'll open up NinjaTrader and your toolbar main panel will be like, if it's on the bottom left of one screen, it'll be on the top right of a totally different monitor. Okay. I did that so that we would, if you're moving the main panel around, you can just leave all of them snapped to it. And then you can show and hide them like so, just by clicking on them like that. And then if you've always got them all snapped to it, well, then every time you move it around, you'll always have them right there beside it. See? And that just makes it much more usable. On that simple, so Tony's asking, on that simple workspace question, how to define the workspace for a workspace button. You don't do that. You can, if you only have one workspace open, then you can save that layout. But if you combine them, then, it's going to save every single chart that you have open. If you don't combine them, let me separate all of these out. And that is this button here. Click to restore current workspace windows. So whatever workspace I'm actually on right now, which I don't really know, let's just see. It says I'm on crude oil. So now I'll click on this button here, and that's going to show only the crude oil charts. So I can arrange these windows and store them in a new button. It basically, the way it works, whatever you've stored in the button, whatever's in view or minimized at the time of you clicking on this save button, is what's going to be stored in that button. If you've got, yeah, that's what I mean, Tony. If you've got another, it doesn't matter if it's TTP stuff or not. It has nothing to do with TTP. It's purely NinjaTrader. So whatever windows are open at the time of you clicking on this button, save button, no matter what NinjaTrader window it is, and of course that depends upon these checkboxes here. You've got to have, whatever you want to save in the button, you've got to have it checked. You've got alerts, charts, the control center, market analyzers, so on and so forth. This one is the catch-all for any new windows they may add. Whatever you've got checked is what's going to be stored when you click on save. So I can save this layout now that's only showing me crude oil charts, and save that in a button. And then when I click on that button, this layout will show up again. And then I can flip to the other workspace and save a layout for that workspace. And then, I can just flip through workspaces like that. So it almost renders the workspace button useless, except that it doesn't, because there are some use cases where so yeah, whatever you have in view when you click on the save button is what's going to be stored. And it doesn't matter what workspace, it's something you created from another vendor, whatever. It's got nothing to do with that. It's all purely based on what you've got set for these different settings here. So play around with it, learn to use it. It's going to help you dramatically. Hopefully it keeps you from being as overwhelmed as you currently are. Once you get the hang of it, but do play around with it, spend some time with it. Think about what is going to be easiest for you to handle, and minimize the overwhelm, minimize the whole what's the word I'm looking for, like goodness gracious, I can't think of it. Now that I try to think of it, I totally forgot what I was even trying to say. Paralysis, analysis, paralysis, you know what I'm talking about? So try to avoid that. Try to set up some layouts where you're not looking at too much all at the same time. Okay. And hopefully this will help you in your trading. Okay. So I'm going to leave it right there. All right. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one.